Hello, welcome to the Gainsborough studio. What you're looking at is the breach in the River Orwell that occurred in the morning of the 1st of February 1953. That led to a significant loss of life in southern Felixstowe along the whole length of Langer Road. You have been aware of the services that have been conducted here in Felixstowe. We had one rededicating the memorial at Langer Road, and we also had a gathering at the Salvation Army Citadel last Saturday, and it's as a result of that service at the Citadel that we have today's guest in the studio, and it was her partner Richard who saw it in the East Anglian Daily Times. So we'll have a word with both Jackie and Richard. Let's kick off. Right. So we have on the settee today young Jackie Young and Richard. And Richard, it was you, I believe, that saw the fact in the East Anglian Daily Times that there was going to be a memorial for the 53 flood victims here in Felixstowe last Saturday at whatever. But then local news media gave you a different story and apparently caused you to have a bit of a panic.
Yes.
And what was that, Richard? You remember?
Well, Jackie saw the reef laying at the memorial and,
Right.
at Langer Road, and the chap on Anglia News said there was going to be a memorial service in a few moments' time up at the Salvation Army.
Oh right, 2 days early.
And it's 2 days early.
Oh right. So you'd already seen it in the East Anglian, the fact that there was to be one
On the
Saturday evening.
And then we weren't sure which was going to be correct, obviously, whether the newspaper had got it wrong or the television had got it wrong.
Right. So how did you check that it was still on and running?
Jackie phoned up the television studio and they actually admitted they had made a mistake.
They didn't put that on there?
No,
No.
they didn't.
Oh, right.
No.
Okay, well, we're all human, aren't we? We all make mistakes.
No.
But we're a small community television network, as you know, and we really want to, if we can, obviously pay the greatest respect to the 41 folk who were
Yes.
lost in that awful 31st Jan to 1st of February. And you, I understand from me and Healy and others of the survivors, they've been endeavouring to find for a very long time. And you suddenly appeared
I know.
at the Citadel. I think we had the US Air Force Colonel there, and lo and behold, you were the daughter of Staff Sergeant Jack D. Short,
Yes.
with 2 T's,
With 2 T's.
who was 21 at the time of being trapped, it would appear, in his home in
Yeah.
Langer Road, and subsequently drowned.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
So how old were you at that point?
I was due to be born, and I was actually born on the 7th of March.
So it's what, 5 weeks?
About 5 weeks after
5
the
weeks
event.
later?
Yeah.
So you were still in the process of being
Made, yeah.
Isn't that amazing? So your mum and dad had got married when he was, I take it he was posted into UK
Yes, he
from
was.
the States.
Yeah, Bentwaters.
So he was into US, well, it's RAF Bentwaters, wasn't
Yeah.
it? They all called RAF.
Yeah.
So he came from the States. Do we know where in America he came from?
He came from West Virginia,
Right.
and all 7 brothers and sisters, quite a big family.
Oh,
And
right.
I don't know how long he'd been here, probably about a year, I'd imagine.
Right.
Posted. I think they'd been married about 10 months by the
Right.
time it happened.
Okay. So what town was he educated and lived in West Virginia? Do we know?
I think it was Bluefields,
Right.
West Virginia.
But you do have the marriage certificate or birth certificate?
I've got his birth certificate, yeah.
So that might give
That
us
might
a-
give me more clues.
I mean, what I need to explain perhaps to our viewers, what we're endeavouring to do is to gather much more complete history and evidence of all the 41
Exactly.
victims
Yeah.
of that terrible tragic
Yeah.
event.
Yeah.
And so he was posted to the UK.
Yes.
I mean, he must have been quite chuffed to rocks, I would have thought. 53,
Mm.
in 1953 rather, 21-year-old, into UK, that must have been quite a nice posting. And
Yeah.
he was based at Bentwaters, but he was living out
In
in a
Felixstowe.
hiring here in Felixstowe.
Yeah, my mother and father were living here, yeah.
Oh, right. So on the night of the event, your mum had stayed in Ipswich, is that
She
right?
stayed in Ipswich with her parents,
Right.
and my father had had a smallpox injection. This is what I'm told, and he wasn't
Right.
very well. So he went back to Langer Road. She didn't go back with him, she was heavily pregnant.
Right.
And he went back to the flat, and my mother decided she'd go down the next day on the bus,
Right.
which she did. And while she was on the bus, she heard people talking about the floods in Langer Road,
Really?
and she knew nothing about it.
So there been nothing on
Nothing.
radio?
No, not in those days.
No.
And as they got closer, obviously everything was roped off, and the floods were very, prevalent there.
Right.
And obviously, I'd imagine she was turned away. And the story goes that they found my father behind the door. I think it was in the lounge, I'm not sure.
Right.
Wedged behind the door, but it took 3 days because they had to wait for the floodwaters to go
Yes,
down.
yes, I heard it was 4.
And that's apparently what happened to him.
Right. So we should be able to get access now, I would have thought, to the
Hope so.
station inquiry
I hope so, yeah.
of Bentwaters and,
Yeah.
and the coroner's report.
Yeah, I hope
and,
so.
And with your help being next to kin, then
Mm.
perhaps we won't have, because apparently others have tried,
Yeah,
because of freedom, this sort
database.
of, whatever it may be, which is sad, isn't it, in the 21st century, that all this information is
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Can't tap in.
And whatever, and we would undoubtedly be very keen to gather that information, and hopefully you can
I'd
help,
like to
you
know
can help
more,
us
yes,
in September.
Yeah, I would
when
love
we,
that.
when we hope to do
Love that.
whatever.
Yeah.
So, your dad had been tragically killed
Mhm.
in the flood. Your mum was expecting you, so you were born where?
I was born in Hertsmere.
Oh, were you?
I was supposed to be born on the base, Bentwaters. My mother had a false labour.
Right.
She was taken into Bentwaters, and I think she hated every minute of it from what she said.
Right.
And sort of everything subsided, so she was sort of brought back out.
Right.
And returned to Ipswich with her parents. And then a few weeks later, I suppose, days, weeks later, she went into labour with me, and they couldn't get her into any hospital anywhere. So my grandfather and my mother were running around different hospitals in a taxi,
Really?
and she ended up at Eye Hospital in Hertsmere.
Oh,
That's where I was
right.
born.
Right. So that's where your place of birth was?
Yes,
Excellent.
yes.
But I understand Hertsmere had quite a high reputation as a community hospital, because that's what it was, wasn't it?
Yes, I
It's
think
sort
it
of
was.
a cottage
Yeah, I
hospital
think it was.
type thing,
Yeah,
so...
Not many of those left, is there now?
No. So you would have been a normal sort of midwife birth?
Yes.
Or whatever. There was no complications, you were there,
I
you
think
were
she had
right.
quite a good pregnancy apart from
Well, that, yes. I mean,
Mm.
that must have been very, very, very...
being so young as she was as well.
So how old was she?
She was 18.
Was she?
Yeah,
So he was 21
yeah.
and she was 18. And we'll know just how much...
She may be coming up to 19 because her birthday was February, my mother's birthday, February
Right.
the 28th.
Right.
March. She might have been 19
Mhm.
by the time she gave birth to me.
Yes,
So it's
right.
allowed.
So what then happened with her life? Did she remarry or did she marry?
Oh, several years later, when I was 13, she remarried.
Oh, that's a
She
lot.
married an Englishman.
Did she? That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Then I've got 2 half sisters.
Oh, right. So there are 3 of you.
Well-
With a bit of support and whatever.
Yeah.
But, so your mum waited that long?
She did, yes, she did.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very traumatic thing to have happen to you at 18.
I mean, growing up, I couldn't appreciate it. I mean,
No.
18, 19 to me seemed an old woman, as you
Right.
do. But now looking back, I mean, oh dear, it must have been horrific for her.
So you really felt she
Now I
she
do.
can't all through her life.
Now it does bring a lot of closure to a lot of things that I needed to have answered by the fact the way my mother was.
Yes.
So I can understand probably better now
Yeah.
as I've got older.
Well, you're of an age to appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I
And
can
I mean,
appreciate
as
it better.
youngsters, you really wouldn't, would you? I mean,
Many
by the
things,
time you were 13, she'd been, what, 31? And
still a young woman.
Very much so. And sadly, as we know now to our cost with this long list
With names.
of 41 folk, the number of lives that were devastated as a result of that flood is nearly incalculable. And I'm hoping this afternoon we can actually go and meet with a lady, Doris Watkins, who lost her 3-year-old child, actually from being within the prefabs on that day. But what she should be able to do for you is explain just how that night of the 31st going into the 1st,
Yes.
how that actually panned out, because the number of people that we have who actually experienced it is sadly becoming fewer.
Yeah.
And it's something that we need to be doing.
So I was surprised to see so many people at the memorial the other night. You know, it's incredible.
I mean, I'm an outsider. I'm a Devonian, and it's something that's always resonated. And I've lived here for nearly 40 years.
Yeah.
And the year in which the memorial was inaugurated was actually 10 years ago, and it was done at midnight.
See, I didn't know that.
No, and it was done at midnight. It was cold, it was snowy, and you had exactly the conditions that those poor people who tried to survive on top of the prefab roofs, and it was eerie.
Without the water.
Without the water.
Yeah.
So that in itself is whether in the future they might enact it at that time of night, because it was that, that was the essence.
Make quite a good film, wouldn't it, Michael?
Yeah, you need a Spielberg, you need somebody
You
with
would.
sensitivity to do it.
You would,
And,
yeah.
I think what is amazing is that there was your father who was lost, who was an American serviceman. We had an RAF aircraftsman, only 22.
Yeah.
He was lost from RAF Felixstowe. And we also had a Royal Military Police who was lost apparently from Land Guard. So there were 3 service branches, 1 American, 2 British.
Different, yeah.
And those are areas we should
Concentrate
to
on.
find out.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for telling us. I mean, what would be fascinating to know is what Jack D. Short thought of us, but we're not going to know that, are we? But you do have some photographs.
I do, indeed.
And we should be able to make a collection and add to this video, because we can add stuff as we find it.
Absolutely, yeah.
So the fact that it would appear the way the flood progressed was Langer Road had significant water in it between sort of midnight and 1:30.
Yes.
And then there was a very big surge
Yeah, I didn't
on the
know
back
that.
of that.
Yeah, that's incredible.
And as you say, your dad had had a smallpox vaccination, which probably was a bit more brutal in reaction than what they are now, because
Exactly.
I've had some that have been pretty bad.
Yeah, we are talking a lot, 60 years ago, aren't we?
And you say he was at the house he was in was an apartment rather than a house.
Yeah, it's 2 flats, top and bottom, and he was on the bottom flat.
So he had no way of getting out anyway. I thought it was a house, so that's another part of the.
No, it's a flat, downstairs flat.
So, and we won't know, will we? But what we do know is we can gather more information. And one thing we would promise is we will correct the spelling of his name.
Thank you. That was very important to me.
And give him an extra
I
T.
always had that trouble at school.
Yeah, I shan't tell you what my name is, because goes on.
Not long, is it?
It's difficult. It's got 3 N's, an M, an E, a Y and an I. But forgetting that, and we also now know he was 21, which
Yes.
is another piece of the record that we didn't have. So
21.
thank you. We are going to leave the studio, subject rather late to a few technical hitches, and you will join us again shortly, hopefully in the company of Doris Watkins, who can tell us just what did happen on the night of the 31st Jan and the morning of the 1st of February, and perhaps thereafter, because this story has carried on and on through the decades following the event, because it's had major impacts upon the lives of many, many people. Thank you. Hello, you find us as promised with a survivor of the 53 flood. That was 31st of Jan to 1st of February, and we joined her in her home, and it's Doris Watkins, and we also have Jackie Young, who I think this is the first opportunity that you've actually had to speak to somebody who was an adult at the time of the 53 floods, when your father was drowned in Langer Road.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Doris, you know, it was a remarkable thing that you survived it all, to be honest, to us
Yes.
listening to what happened. So, could we just take you through being in Langer Road in the first place in a prefab?
Yes.
You were married to William.
Yeah.
He had, I believe, been a part of the retreat to Dunkirk, and he actually gave covering fire and protection to those who were retreating.
Yeah.
But he himself experienced a very near miss where sadly his army colleagues were not as fortunate.
No. No, that's right.
So
Yes.
he saw his service out in the army, and he ended up with a job at RAF Felixstowe. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes. Yes. But
So-
he couldn't go for anything else because
No.
whatever he went to in, it was death
As a
in one
result,
side
right?
because of the routine.
The actual.
Yeah. And
So to explain, he was actually part of a gun crew that actually seemed to have suffered a direct hit, and he
yeah.
was the only one that survived,
Yeah,
but by
yeah.
being deaf and so.
That's right.
So he was damaged
Yeah.
by the Second World War.
Yes. Yes.
But you were one of those who was fortunate enough to actually have been allocated a prefab.
Yes. Well, we were both ex-service, you see.
Right.
I was in the ATS for a time.
Were you?
Yes.
Right.
And
So did you serve with the Queen, or didn't you join her particular platoon?
no.
Because the Queen was there, wasn't she? She was
Yes,
in the
yes.
ATS.
Yes.
Right. So you met and you married, I take it in Felixstowe, did you? Or-
Yes,
Right.
yes. Yes.
And was
We
he?
moved here from London,
Oh, right.
just outside of London, Greenford.
Oh, right.
And he lived with he come home
Yes.
from the army and he was with his mother
Right.
in Exeter Road.
Oh, right. So
So-
he was a local boy.
Well, the whole
As
family were Welsh.
Oh, were
They
they?
come this part of the country.
Right.
Oh,
So
it's terrible.
so he lived in Exeter Road, which was a long way away from the seafront. So
Oh yes.
so
yes.
when were you allocated a prefab? What sort of year was that? Because they were built in when?
1947.
Oh, so you were there for a number of years. So you were there for 6 years.
Yes. Six.
Right.
I said 7, didn't they?
Well, yeah. So
Yeah.
6, 7 years, and you had what? 3 children,
2,
right?
and
So
I was pregnant with the 3rd.
with the third, right? So your oldest was 3.5
Yes.
when the 53 flood hit you.
Yes.
You had a younger boy, I believe.
Boy 2.
So he was 2.
That's him there.
Right. Oh yes. Well, he looks fit and healthy.
He is.
And you also were pregnant with another.
Yes.
Right. So this particular night, there was knowledge that there were big storms blowing, because if I remember, the report says the wind was
Well-
9 to 12, it was hurricane, blowing to hurricane force.
Yes, well, we went, Alice and I went up to the town. My husband stayed in the prefab.
Oh, right.
Well, Saturday night, you see, we didn't go up. Sorry, I'm stuttering.
No, you're on medication and that tends to...
Yeah,
So
And-
the viewer would just have to persevere. I mean...
and we went up the town
Mhm.
because we didn't get paid till Friday night, but there was no good going out then.
Right,
So we went up and got the things for the weekend.
right.
And the wind was terrible then.
It was.
Oh, so, and we got nearly blown off our feet, and we got off the bus at Station Road,
Right,
and we walked the rest of the way down to the prefab.
right.
And you know, it was really a struggle, you know, to put one foot in front of
But
the
there was
other.
a dance on apparently in the pavilion that night.
Yes, yeah,
So they managed and they all got there.
yeah,
And they also left because
Yeah.
I understand the train left Beach Station Road with those going back to Ipswich
Yeah,
on
yeah.
it.
But
So
do you know-
it's quite amazing, isn't
Do
it?
you know
No.
that the Air Force got known about the
The storm itself.
storm itself
Right.
at 11 o'clock.
Did they?
Yeah.
Now I heard that they posted a notice in the cinema
Yes.
telling all of those from RAF Bordsey that they were to go to RAF Felixstowe because the ferry would not be running.
That's right.
So was that based on the fact that the boatman had told them there ain't no way we're going to run a boat across this river?
I
in
don't know
this
how they
storm?
got to know
No.
about the stuff not running,
Right.
but they knew, and so did the RAF.
Yeah, I think you're very right because in here I got some documentation from the exhibition at Orford, and there it says that RAF Orford Ness evacuated people off Orford Ness around 10 or 11 o'clock.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
there was more knowledge about them
Yeah,
than
yeah.
we've been led to believe. So what you obviously did your shopping, got home,
Yeah.
packed it away. The
Shut
whole
all the
prefab
doors.
would have been blowing.
Yeah, because it was cold, you see.
It must have been
Yeah.
cold. So, and you only had a little fire, didn't you? In
That's all,
prefabs, with
yeah.
those lovely open doors and
One smaller than that.
indeed.
Yeah.
So that's all you had to warm the house. So it would have been a
Yes,
bit parky. So one would assume, did you then go to bed early? Hot water?
I
what
went
was-
to bed early because I was tired.
Right.
We have realised now that my struggle for the wind
Yes.
was
Really tired you out.
tired me out.
Right.
And I mean, we put 2 baked potatoes under the fire,
Right.
and we were going to have them,
Right.
and they were still under there when we got home after the flood. So my husband said he went down there a couple of days after when he was out.
Yeah.
I don't know how long now, maybe 2 or 3 days.
Well, it says in there that that part of town, Orford Road, Langer Road, was flooded for 4 days after the event,
Yes,
and you couldn't
so
get
it
there
Must have been
because
after
they brought in
that.
some RAF Matadons, didn't they? Those big trucks. And
Yes.
whether they use those, I don't know, but it's something
They
we'll
they
find out.
pumped all the water
Right.
was in the street. Because
Back
when
up.
say what, it was about 4 foot high.
Right.
Still,
Yes. Yes.
they pumped all that into Langer Park,
Oh, did they? All
Into
the
the
way
park.
down there because
and
there's
that
a flood.
stayed there for 6 to 8 weeks, and nobody. Well,
That's it,
obviously there was too much to do,
Yes.
otherwise.
Indeed there was.
and that was. I didn't go down there anymore.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised. I think I would have found
I-
it very hard. Very
Yeah,
hard indeed.
I think
So-
I wouldn't spend a night down there now.
No.
No,
So there you were, having done your shopping, struggled against the storm force, hurricane force wind,
yeah,
and you got home, put in a couple of what would have been baked potatoes,
yeah.
and then
Give the
you,
kids a
you,
tea.
you were knackered and
Yeah.
you all went to bed,
Oh, yeah.
other than William,
Yeah,
who
and
stayed
him
up for a bit.
soon afterwards, but
So what
I
sort of
know-
time was this? Sort of 9, 10 o'clock? Later?
9, I think, about 9,
Right.
yeah.
So what I heard from other folks I've interviewed is that certainly on the Langer Road side, some neighbours roused other neighbours. And it would appear about 11:30 the overtopping on the prom had got to the point where apparently there was a foot of water on the prom. That's what the record shows. And that must then have flowed down into Langer Road.
It burst.
When did you lose the electricity? Did you got any idea? Or did you just wake up and there wasn't any?
No. As I said, the young policeman knocked.
Oh, you had
I
a
mean-
policeman. Oh, right. Yes.
My next door neighbour, George Wallace,
Yes.
he was outside for some odd reason.
Right.
I was weighing up with everything, I think.
Mm.
And he said to the policeman who was going by, "Hey mate, what you doing? What's happening?"
Right.
And he says, "I don't know." He says, "I'm going down up to the station and ask them what's going on down here."
That was back to the police station.
Yes.
Oh, right.
And the police station was up in High Road.
Indeed it is. Yes. And still is.
Yes.
Still there.
Yeah. And he went off and he said, "Well, you better call my neighbour because she's pregnant and she goes to bed early."
Right. And then what happened?
Then the policeman came and knocked at our door.
Right.
Because I met George afterwards.
Right.
And he told me that little bit.
So when did you lose the electricity?
The policeman says I should get dressed in case you have to evacuate. Right, so we got the kids dressed and we dressed.
Right.
And as we have been inside a prefab,
Yeah, indeed. My godmother was very grateful to get one in the 50s.
I know
She really was. It
we
was a
were
lovely home for her.
absolutely thrilled. And as we come out the bedroom, there's a big hall. It's a big kind of hall. And the electric box was in there.
Yes.
And as we went through that to get to the door to try and open it,
Right.
there was a blue flash.
All right.
So I take it that the
Shorted it out.
yeah,
So it could have been the water that took it out rather than
I
being
should
switched
imagine.
off.
I should imagine.
So you were then inside the prefab
Inside the hall,
with the water rising.
yeah, we went to open the yell lock.
Yes.
That's why I've never had a yell lock since.
No.
So
No.
went to pull and pull and pull. You couldn't open it.
And
So
then you said to me that the water came in under through the floorboards,
Yes,
lifted the flooring,
yes.
and the flooring trapped the door and
Yes,
stopped the door from being
Well,
open.
we see, if you get a lino
Yes.
and no try and open it, it just bubbles up, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
So I reckon that's what happened to some of them
Right.
who didn't get called.
Who couldn't get out?
No, particularly the young couple. Swisdale or something. Any case,
There are a number, sadly, the record shows the whole
Yeah,
family
yes.
failed to get out.
yes, that's right.
So there you are, electricity gone, water rising,
Couldn't get out the door.
couldn't get out the door.
So we went and
to
stood
the
by
window?
the window.
Right.
So,
So the window was to get out, to get away, or to get out to get onto the roof?
to get away.
Right.
My husband said,
Get out of it.
if we get out of it, out of here, he says, I'll lift you and the children.
Right.
He said, we'll go out over the seafront.
Yes.
And I thought myself, it's a funny thing to do. I said, we can't go out there, Bill.
Right.
I said, because the water's coming in, because the sea's out the front. I thought it was coming in.
No, it's coming in the back.
Yeah. And he says, no. He says, come on. He says, it's
Right.
coming down the back.
He was right.
Round the back of us.
Yeah.
And it hit prefab later on.
Mm.
It hit it with such a force it burst all the windows in the back.
Yes,
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
says the doors and windows were stoved.
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
And it just, a big surge coming
Yeah.
over the railway.
So it
embankment.
seemed to go over the weekend. I don't know. It's just seemed,
It would have been a
it
huge
was-
amount of energy
yeah.
coming.
yeah.
Because I think we showed you, did we not, that agricultural map that shows the breach in the river wall, and we'll sort of incorporate this into, and if you look there, what they say, the Ministry of Ag, was that in the early stages you had overtopping on the prom all the way down to Landguard Point, but you also added in from the river, so you had overtopping that way, and most of that water must have found its way into Langer.
Yeah.
So that must have been at the stage where you had water in the house and you lost the electricity.
Yeah.
And then, and this was at 1:30
Yeah.
when this breach occurred, and it was 260 feet. That's a 100-yard dash that you remember. There was that width. And at that point, all the water in Orwell Haven, that would have been the Orwell, the store, the whole lot, was being held back by this massive sea
Yeah.
surge. So, if you like, it must have been like, I can't really envisage, but it must have been like punching a hole in a colander and all the water streamed across Landguard.
Doesn't matter. Let it be.
Oh, it's a communication with you. We can edit that out. But
Yeah. It's only my son. He rings me every day.
right, and he'll go on to answer phone.
Yeah,
will it?
yeah.
Okay,
He'll
so
probably ring me later on. What you doing?
what I'm, they've given us times as to when these events occurred, right?
Yeah.
So going back to where we were. So what this map of the sea flood of January 31st, February the 1st, it was compiled by the Ministry of Ag and Fish in 1954. What it seems to be saying, diagrammatically, is that we had overtopping from the front, from Manor Terrace down to the Landguard. We had overtopping from the back, from the river, and all of that actually
Ollie.
took place by around 12:30. But then at 1:30, the breach in the river wall took place just down from Calvary Cliff, and that was a massive
Yeah.
breach. So one would assume that started a whole race across what would have been Landguard. Well, I suppose really this was always been a floodplain, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it was held briefly on the railway embankment all the time.
Yeah.
So if the breach happened here at 1:30, then it was probably later than that. Come on then, come on then. We've got somebody else who wants to take part. Come on,
Yeah.
Polly. You can do it. Yes, you can.
Yes.
You put in your tuppence worth. Okay. So we're now at the point where this has probably already occurred. You're in the prefab. You've lost the electricity. We're now looking at this one coming at you, aren't we?
Yes.
So at what point did you start getting out of the window?
Well, I know that as I stood by the window, it creeped up my legs. Have you had
Yeah.
ice cold water gradually
Yeah.
crept and crept? And I
Sinister.
thought,
Awful. Yes.
And my husband says, I think he says we better get out.
Oh,
Some.
yes.
I just, how are we going to do it if the water's in now? He said, no, he says, come on, he says, you can, we can do it, he says, I'll get up on the roof.
Good man.
Yeah,
Right.
he was marvellous and he took everything in his stride
Yeah.
and just took it as a matter of fact that I'd
So
followed
he
him.
got out of the window.
He got out
he
to the
climbed
window,
onto the roof.
climbed on that little porch
Yes.
and then onto the window.
Oh, I know where you are. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So it's porch roof.
Yeah.
So then you had to pass the children.
Then, yeah. I was then standing on the ridge
Yes.
of the window,
Yes.
you know,
Yes, I know where
with
you
both feet.
are. Right.
and I put my arm like that out the window to hold myself up there.
On the window frame.
Held Christopher in this arm
Right,
and Alison in this.
right.
And when his hand come down and shouted, I knew I'd got to pass one of the children to him.
Absolutely.
So I got Chris by the back of the neck,
Right,
ducked him under the water and out.
right.
He didn't make a fuss or anything,
Did you know? 2-year-old
but
boy.
my daughter, she wouldn't go.
Did she not? Right,
No, and so I had to pass her, to break the window up there
right,
and pass her through.
right.
She went, and I had to put her through like long ways and still
Oh, I'm
hold,
with you, yes.
yeah, and still hold the window. I just got her up there when the water broke in.
So this surge you were talking about
Yeah.
was the one that probably hit you as you passed your daughter to your husband?
Yes.
Would that be right?
Yeah, and
So what did you do?
I just hung onto the window,
Right,
felt my head hit the roof,
right,
and then I knew, so I was a swimmer.
right.
So just grabbed at the window and I just had to go under the water to get out of the window.
Right, so you surfaced on
Put
the
my
water.
hand up
Yes.
and he grabbed it. I could feel him grab it.
Right.
And
So he pulled you onto the roof.
yeah,
So there were the 4 of you then,
yeah, yeah.
and this would have been what, 2 o'clock?
What on the
So
we
when you,
just
I was just working on
yeah,
this time,
Yeah.
surge, the sequence of events.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was certainly after 1:30 when
Must
that
have been.
first happened. So we're in there. So you then you had dressed,
yes,
but you were
yes,
absolutely
yes,
soaking wet.
yes.
So you've got no
When we
idea
got-
what effect that
When
would
we
have.
when you come from the prefab to the roof, we
Yeah.
lost our feet. I lost our shoes.
Did you?
Every one of us lost their shoes.
So you were there barefooted
Yeah,
on the roof.
yeah,
The wind was still blowing at hurricane force, so it would be doing that buffer.
yeah,
It was
And-
freezing,
yeah,
and you were there at probably just after 2-ish.
yeah.
So when was the first time you saw another moving human being? And one would assume there are other people on other roofs
Yeah.
around
Oh
you.
yes. I
Because
could
it was a
see.
it was a moonlit
I could
night,
see
wasn't
my
it?
neighbour Tom.
Could you?
Yes, and he was laying down like we were,
Yes.
laying down. Then you,
Keep out of
as
the
Bill
way.
said, lay down. He says that wind won't catch us then.
Right.
He lay down. He held Alison in between him and me,
Right.
and Christopher was with me.
Should be right there.
Yeah,
So you're in line and
yeah, and I could sense, or I don't know why,
yeah.
but I put my arm through his half belt at the back.
Oh right. Yes.
He kept trying to move away.
Right. No.
So I put my arm through his back,
yeah.
like,
And keep as close as you possibly could.
yeah, and I kept him like this,
Yeah.
and he couldn't move away.
Right.
I knew that we would you'd go unconscious.
Could well do.
And the next time was when the 2 police, I woke up, there was 2 policemen looking at me.
What, in a boat?
No, they were up on the roof.
Were they?
Yeah,
But obviously you came in a boat.
yes, in Butland's.
Oh, I
Pleasure
heard
boats.
about that. I mean, that's surreal, isn't it?
Yeah,
It was an amusement
there was,
arcade toy that effectively
Yeah.
was used to effect rescue of people.
yeah, and there was 2 policemen, me and the 2 kids,
Right. And where was Bill?
no, up on the roof.
Oh, right.
They couldn't take any more, could they?
I don't know.
No.
So they'd got you in the boat
They
and
got
then they
me,
rowed you.
we rolled over.
Right. So you didn't go to the Cavendish?
No,
They took
Yeah,
you
we took them
straight to hospital.
Herman's
did they?
Distillery,
Oh, the Herman
the
Distillery. Yes, I know the Herman
back
Distillery.
behind there.
Yes.
And that's when they transferred me to a lorry,
Right.
and they took the kids into a house there,
Right.
and they put them in a corner. And as I say,
You don't know.
Yeah.
But Christopher lived.
yes, but
Alison
you must
lived.
remember that Alison was nearly 4,
Yes.
and I mean, she's frightened.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Petrified.
mean, I really think that why she died,
Was to be separated.
because she separated from me
It was a strange
and
thing
her
to do.
father.
Yeah.
She didn't know anybody. She, I mean, say, Chris would go to anybody, you know.
Well, you do
We
it at
sort
that
of-
age.
yeah.
At 2, you
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. But with Alison, she knew everything round her, like, you know, everything, you know.
So she
She's a
died.
little old hen, you know, she used to copy me and everything.
So she died from hypothermia. That was the
Yes,
cause of death.
Yes. But my
And-
doctor got to the upstairs bedroom
Right.
where they were.
Mhm.
He was looking around for patients of his,
Yes.
or Dr. Poole,
Yes.
and he says, "Who are these two?" She said, "I know them." He says,
Mm.
"That's old Doris Watkins."
Children.
know.
Yeah.
And he examined her and she was dead.
I find it very strange at this bit, but perhaps that's for another time. So you were put in a lorry and taken somewhere else. Where were you taken?
Little cottage hospital.
What, the general? What is now
General,
the general?
yeah.
Like the one in...
Yeah, we always called it the cottage
Well,
hospital.
I think we still should, personally, because it makes
I
more
think-
sense.
Yeah,
So you went there, and I take it quite a lot of other survivors also went there, did they?
that's it.
But you got no sort of recollection.
No recollection of anybody else.
But William was
Well-
okay? Did William get hospitalised or no?
Yes, he got there.
Mhm.
That's when they found his toe was gangrene, would go, well, prospering.
Right.
And because he was taken off, and what he told me later,
Mm.
that he was taken off the roof unconscious.
Because they came back for him, I take
Yeah.
it, after you and the kids
Yeah.
had been...
Yeah,
Right.
there was a decent time after me on, and in any case,
So the time they came to collect you, was that sort of early in the morning? 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock? Any idea at all? Was it light? Was it dark?
but I thought it was light.
So that would have been after 6, 7, because it was
Yeah.
it's February and sunrise isn't that early.
Yeah. So any
So,
case,
right.
I don't know what time they got off,
No.
but he he couldn't remember anything. He was dropped in the water because he was so stiff, you see,
Yes.
and they brought him to the edge of the prefab
Right.
and promptly dropped him in the water.
Okay.
But that was a good thing, really, because probably that saved his life.
It sort of
I
shock
think,
hit
yes.
him. Yeah.
But he didn't come to. He was taken from the prefab over to,
Herman Stern.
no,
Cavendish.
Station Road, up top, Station Road.
Right. Station Road.
No, it isn't Station
No,
Road. It's
no.
Orwell, isn't it? Orford.
Orford Road.
Orford Road. He was
Right.
taken up to Orford Road, and he was taken up where the shop started.
Right.
And he was taken out of the boat,
Right.
and he can remember somebody talking to him. And he was put in the back of a car, injected,
Right.
and
Gone.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when they got, he can remember, he'd come to as he got to the hospital.
Right. And this was the cottage hospital again?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
right. So you were both in there?
Then we were both in there.
So who had Christopher?
He was in, when my doctor got
Hmm.
know where he was,
Yes.
he said, the girl's dead.
Right.
He says, but I'll have the boy, he says, and I'll take him in my car. And
So that was your
I'll
family
get
GP who did that?
yes,
Right, okay. So, there you are, partially reunited in the hospital.
hmm
One would assume they discharged you after a period of time. What provision was made for you as a family? Did you have a home or somewhere to go, or was it? Did you go back on your own family?
I went back to my mother.
Right.
Yes,
And where was that? That was.
Seaton Road.
Oh, so it was within Felixstowe.
Yes, yes.
Right. So, you told me a remarkable story about the butter.
Oh, yes. Well, I used to get the breakfast all laid out
Yes.
because Bill used to get up early.
And he worked at RAF Felixstowe.
Yes.
Right.
And of course, I didn't have to get up. I could have the kids in bed and
Yes.
we'd have a laugh and a joke kind of thing. And then, yes, the flood came.
Yes.
We were all out. My husband.
But you'd set the breakfast. then?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And he went down when they could go down.
Yes.
I don't know what it was, 3 or 4 days after.
It was certainly 4 days.
I think I was in a daze. And
You had every right to be.
and then he went down there,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously the chairs and everything floated.
Right. So these are the chairs around the kitchen table.
Anything,
So they all floated.
anything,
So they
all
floated off.
cities and everything else.
Right.
And he looked at the table and he thought to himself, well, I don't know. Then he looked up at the ceiling and the butter was stuck to the ceiling.
So basically, what must have happened is the breakfast with
All right.
with all of that and the butter laid out was actually pushed onto
Yes.
the ceiling,
Everything went was
and the butter was then stuck
yeah,
to the ceiling itself. And then when the water receded, that dropped, but the butter stayed.
butter stayed there.
Which sort of gives a lie to the depth of the water that we have showing on our
Yeah, people
memorial.
don't believe that
Because-
I touched the top of the,
Yeah.
the ceiling with my head.
Yeah. But by that time, your prefab had actually been wrenched off its foundations.
Yes,
So to a degree, it was also floating.
yeah,
So therefore, not only was it wrenched off, but it was floating to a degree. The water was pushing that butter into the ceiling.
good to us.
So what actually was that top of that surge in height going through Langer Road, which explains really, Jackie, why,
Oh, yeah.
depending at what point your dad was, you said that he had an injection
Yes.
that day. So it's highly probable that he had an early night and you might have a drink to sort of help you sleep.
Yeah,
So he could have well just been asleep, and the water would have come into Langer Road because it was a downstairs flat, which I hadn't realised. I thought he was in the house, but it was actually a downstairs flat he had, wasn't it? So if
They
he'd
reckon he
been,
was in the armchair and he'd obviously fallen asleep, I think.
so this surge that Doris is
no, I
talking about,
heard.
and everybody else has told me about, that would have been a fair sort of bow wave going down Langer Road. And if he was already, because a lot of people say they sort of got out of bed or whatever and stood in cold water.
Yeah,
And you're saying that before the surge came, the water was actually going up the back of your legs
yeah,
in the prefab, which is stood off the ground anyway.
yeah.
So that sounds as if, Jackie, how it may have happened. You know, I don't know how you feel. I mean, I don't know whether there's anything that you would like to ask Doris to. But that explanation sounds to be the way it happened, doesn't it? That you had the overtopping both
Yeah, it
from
does,
the river
doesn't
and
Yeah, yeah.
Langer Road filled
Oh
with
yes,
water.
there was something other than the sea coming in.
It was a river.
You know, we swung our legs out and they were in water. And I don't know why I didn't take any notice. But, you know, surprise, you know, water's everywhere. And you're looking for excuses why water is out. And, it's silly really the way you think.
Mind you, if you're
You
just
think-
woken up, you often,
Yes.
you really don't know what's happening
Yeah.
there.
I mean, say silly things. Well,
Mhm.
yeah, I told you about the chest of drawers. I mean, all my baby clothes were all put in the bottom drawer. My father had knitted me 2 shawls because he is an old soldier and he
Yeah.
didn't smoke and drink.
Very wise
Yeah.
man.
And when the water went down, all the furniture seemed to go back together.
Mm.
You know, the drawers shut, doors shut, everything like
It's
that.
funny you say that, Doris, because when I was growing up, we had a wardrobe in my bedroom, and that was in the Felixstowe floods,
Was it?
and that had all gone back to what it was.
Yeah,
With a story to tell.
yeah.
I mean, I've got my father's uniform at home, things like this, and dog tags, and
Yeah,
pictures of him. But I've been to America and met my family several times actually. There's quite a lot of them still there.
But this is the first time you've actually had the opportunity to speak to somebody who actually
Oh yeah,
lived through
Yes.
that
it's
tragic-
incredible to hear your story.
yes, well, everybody got a story.
Everybody's
haven't
got
they?
one.
That's it.
But I think,
Dreadful things.
I mean, to have survived on that roof for that length in those conditions
Don't think I could do it.
is quite remarkable.
Well, we
Quite
were, I was
How far
very,
pregnant were you then, Doris?
she was born on the 18th of March.
To my mother.
It almost could be your
I
twin.
was the 7th.
Could be the twin.
So you were a good 8
Yeah.
months, weren't you? Just the
Yeah,
second.
yes.
Can you imagine that with the babe on each arm
Oh.
and the water hit?
Yeah.
So,
Would you do anything rather than lose your kids?
of course you would. Why were the prefabs located in the lowest part
Mm.
You
of our
are,
flood? Why were they down there at all?
you are the people of Felixstowe.
I mean, I'm aware that, I live not far from Chester Road, and I'm aware that they dug footings there and they found the bigger people and all that sort of stuff at that time.
Yeah.
So there were obviously other places in the town that
Oh yes.
prefabs could go. So they were in Chester Road, weren't they?
Yeah.
Until they were
And
replaced.
they had a site down Old Felixstowe,
Did they?
but the people in that part of Felixstowe objected.
Why? Well, we'll
Well, they
never
thought it was
remember.
better than anybody else, didn't they?
No.
So as a result, they then chose
Labour.
Langer Road. That must be one of the worst planning decisions Felixstowe Urban District Council ever made.
And did you see in my book, at the back there, it says what I said, that the mayor of Felixstowe, or somebody of Felixstowe,
Captain Smith was the
Yeah.
Urban District Council chairman.
I can't think what his name was.
He was
But
the one who
he's-
said it was an act of God.
He stopped all traffic and television people coming into the town.
Really?
It says there in that book, so,
All right.
yeah.
We will need to look at that book
Yeah.
and we will try to incorporate that into this, what seems to be a ever-growing story with many, many more people.
Yeah,
And when you consider 41 died, there were 450 people apparently went through the Cavendish. There were 700 to 800 properties that were affected and flooded and damaged. That's a huge number of people with a massive impact upon whatever. And I mean, one of the perhaps difficulties for the civic administration was that the coronation was about to happen, wasn't it? And
oh yes, of course.
I've read the, in fact I must try to get a copy for you, the Felixstowe Times of the 7th of February, and there it records a Urban District Council meeting. And I think you'll read that with great interest. And also the Coroner's Court. And there are some, of the time, you know, contemporary with what was happening. Newspaper reports are very illuminating. What I really need to get hold of, and there might be somebody out there who has it, is the copy of the Felixstowe Times for the 14th of February, when we will have more of a story, because they didn't know on the 7th quite how many people they'd lost, but the coroner had already sat and done some
Yeah.
hearing.
Well, I've got the paper, but I can't for my life find it.
Can you know?
Yeah.
I do that all the
But it's
time.
hidden, you know, I'll put that there and I'll...
Put it safely and then you can't find it.
Yeah, I think we all do that.
all the
don't
time.
we?
Yeah.
You know.
So safe that we can't find it ourselves.
Okay. So you moved away from the seafront. So where did you bring your family up after that? Where were you living?
Well, we stayed with our mother for about a month or 6 weeks.
Right.
And then they were allocating some houses in Store Avenue. That's where they give me a house, Store Avenue.
Actually, a number of survivors ended up in Store
Yes,
Avenue.
yeah,
And some of the
yeah.
people from the ferry
Yeah.
lived there.
Yeah,
They could have found a name that wasn't a river, couldn't they?
yeah.
That would have helped, you know.
Never
sort of-
thought of that.
No, I
No,
did
that was the
recently.
unhappiest time of my life.
Well, Doris
Not
Ca-
only because I lost Alison, but the atmosphere and everything else. I couldn't stand it.
Doris, if it were to happen now, you would have unbelievable amount of support around you and things, they wouldn't have left you to fend for yourself. And from what you're saying, you look pretty much if you were left to fend for
Yeah.
yourself and your family
Yeah.
and whatever.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I read a lot about the London Lord Mayor Fund and all the, and if we do have time again, perhaps we can talk to you about that. But for now, I think Jackie has hopefully got a feel of what happened on that night and
Yeah.
morning. And
Well,
thank you very much for telling us that and sharing it with us.
Yes, yes, you're welcome, John. You know, it's sore when you talk about it, but
We need to know that.
yeah.
You know, the
Oh,
community
yes.
needs to know,
Yes.
and hopefully come September we will have a much more comprehensive.
Mm.
Whatever. Hopefully you'll be one of our guest speakers.
No.
But thank you, my love. That's really
Thank
kind
you.
of you. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Great.
Thank you, Doris.
Thank you.